Hello, welcome back to the CashPT Lunch Hour podcast. This is your host, Aaron LeBauer, and today I have a special guest. His name is Rob Grupe, and Rob is joining us because of a recommendation from one of my fellow mastermind members and my coach, Pedro, and Xander Fryer, who's one of the mastermind members. We were meeting a few months ago, and Bedros was sharing a story about Rob and about like his business journey, and he mentioned, his backstory, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And because it has to do with opioids and addiction and jail and being a successful business owner. And Xander was like, Aaron, you need to get him on your podcast. And so I've got Rob here today. I think we're going to have a very special episode. So Rob, thank you so much for being here on the show. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Definitely glad to be here and share.
So Rob is the owner of Twice Bitten CrossFit, and he also does online coaching, and he's got a very successful business. But Rob, I want to go back and start. Like, can you tell us about how'd you get into learning CrossFit? What's your story? What was the transformation that happened? Can you I know this is we could talk for hours, but 5-minute version, and we'll tease out the pieces. Okay.
Yeah. So, I guess it started, I was a fat kid growing up, and, I got into bodybuilding. My dad got me into it when I was about 11. I'd had an incident where I got beat up and kind of humiliated by some older boys, and just the feeling that I had afterwards of like, oh man, why didn't I do something? I felt humiliated, and I never wanted to feel that way again. And bodybuilding was the avenue that basically started to build my identity, build my self-confidence. So I really started down that path, hardcore, learned everything that I could about it. And then during that time, as I was developing through there, I got a lower back injury. So I hurt my back deadlifting, and it basically it took my identity from me. I identified as this person, I wanted to be as big and as strong as I could possibly be. And then all of a sudden I was not able to work out anymore. And I had made some bad decisions when I was younger in my life and got into selling drugs, dealing drugs. And one of the drugs that I dealt was Oxycontin. And so with that injury, I began taking Oxycottons. And for me, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. I felt amazing when I took them. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Why have I never done this before? But I had no idea what I was getting myself into at that time. And so what started off as a way to just feel better turned into a full-blown addiction, to where it was, I need to do this so I'm not sick.
Right. Was this, so you're working out probably 5-6 days a week, hurt your back. Uh-huh. What happened? Did you go see a physician, surgeon, somebody, and what happened there? Did they prescribe this to you, and then you were just anyways, you had it easy?
I guess let me back up and put the sequence in a little bit better order. So I was into dealing and selling drugs, and I'd actually gotten strep throat one time, and I had those Oxycottons, and that's when I tried one for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, this is awesome. And so I started taking them. I was doing jujitsu at the time. I would take them, go to jujitsu practice, have amazing practices. I would take them and then work out. And then I could work out harder. It was just awesome. And then I was actually on Oxycontons when the injury occurred. Mm-hmm. So then it was even more Oxycontons, and it turned into a $300 a day habit.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, I was taking at the peak of it, 10 80 milligram Oxycontons a day. So just for context,
right,
of people, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is. Did you see, I mean, so just having access, easy access to Oxy, and, you know, did you even go see anyone about your back, or did you just take it and just work through your back and that was an issue?
So I was getting my Oxycottons through a Mexican connection at the time, and that went away. And then I just had to buy them black market. And again, you know, that turned into like a $300 a day habit. And even though I was dealing drugs, that it came to a point where it wasn't sustainable even with that. So I reached a point to where I was about to just tell my family what was going on and get help. I mean, I needed help. But around that same time, somebody came to me and was like, hey, you should just go to a methadone clinic.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. So I did that, and it went from me doing, you know, spending $300 a day to me spending $50 a week. And they bumped me up to 180 milligrams of methadone a day. That was my maintenance dose. And again, that's a lot. So yeah, I made that switch to doing that. And that was a short-term fix.
Right. And this was like methadone clinic, you go see a physician, they say, yeah, you're taking Oxy, we're going to get you on another drug.
Right. So methadone is a synthetic opiate with opiate blocker in it. So what happens is they start you on a dose, and then they will bring you all the way up to 100 milligrams, and then have you come in and take a blood trough test to see how quickly it's metabolizing out of your system. Based on that, they bumped me up all the way to 180 milligrams. And as I'm going through this, I'm like, okay, well, how is this going to stop me from taking Oxycottons? Right. And I found out when I went and bought a bunch of them, crunched them up and sniffed them, and they did absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because of the opiate blocker in there. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's how that works. So I didn't do those anymore. But again, we weren't solving the problem. And the really challenging thing about it is when you go to a methadone clinic, at least, you know, when I went there, you get a counselor, and they, you know, talk to you about what's going on. And basically my counselor told me that because I had taken so many opiates into my system, that basically my receptors were messed up to the point to where I was going to have to be on methadone for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Is that the way it is right now, though?
No.
So, what was the solution? Like, what was the thing? What was the, you know, like what got you from, well, I don't want to say from there to here, because there's a lot, but like, what was the next thing? Because I know that you spent some time incarcerated.
Right.
At the next thing, and it was just, that was, or I mean, like,
so just touching on like the power of addiction there. Like I also, during this time when I was on methadone, I started taking cocaine. I was sniffing it at first, and then it messed up my nose so bad that I went to shooting it. Yeah. And I was shooting cocaine about 15 times a day. And there was one time where I was in the bathroom about to take a shot. My daughter and her mom were in the next room, and they had no idea that it was like this. They had no idea that I was shooting drugs. And then I had justified everything in my mind to the point where I would, you know, I got really good quality cocaine, and I would weigh out each shot, and I would use bacteriostatic water when I would shoot it. So I was being super safe and all that good stuff. And on this particular day, I had made up a double shot that I meant to split, but I forgot. So in that moment, when I'm in the bathroom and I'm taking that shot, you know, as soon as I push all of it into my vein, I realized that I messed up, that I just took a double dose, and inside I'm starting to freak out. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't want them to know. Right. So I get myself into the shower, water's flowing over me. And I'm just like praying like, oh my God, you know, please don't let me die. Please don't let me die. And then I have these images in that moment of my daughter and her mom, they're visiting my grave site. And I'm just like, just all this is going through my mind. And then it passes. And I know like I'm in the clear, and you'd think that that would be the moment that I'm like, okay, you know, and that's when I decided to turn my life around. But it didn't work that way. The power of addiction was so strong that literally 30, 45 minutes later, I was making up another shot.
Mm-hmm.
So just to bring that around to say that when you're in that state of mind, you find ways to justify things that aren't justifiable.
Right.
So what brought all that to an end, you know, my family's trying to reach out to me at this point, and every time they talk to me, I'm like, no, I'm good. You know, I'm just tired, you know, this and that. And then I ended up falling asleep at the wheel at a stoplight. My foot stayed on the brake somehow. Who knows how many cycles of the light went through before the police actually got there. So I woke up to the police pulling me out of my vehicle. And I had drugs and a gun on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how out of control life had gotten. And so I had to go to court, had an attorney and all that. That was like, you know, first offense, no big deal. But it didn't work that way. You know, I had a good amount of cocaine on me when I got pulled over, or when they got me. I had a gun. And when it came sentencing day, instead of getting a slap on the wrist or probation, they gave me a 20-year prison sentence.
Wow.
You know,
And you hadn't had
Right?
any prior, had you had any prior convictions or misdemeanors?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. So it was just in that, you know, I thought I was going home that day.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that moment, like when the judge said what she said, it got really real, you know, as they're cuffing me up, my family's crying. And I just made a decision that day that I was going to change my life, and I was going to help other people change their lives as well. But that's also when the cold turkey process of coming off of opioids went down as well.
Yeah. Was that the bottom? Like that moment, the bottom, was that the turning point, or was that somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I made the decision. I mean, I can just vividly recall it, because when I got that sentence, I got really upset, you know, and I didn't have anybody to be upset with but myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I made all the decisions that led to that moment. It didn't matter that, yeah, it was my first offense, and I didn't feel like it was unfair. I was shocked by it, but I was like, okay, you know, it's because of the decisions that I made that I'm here right now in this situation. So I'm going to make every day count. There's not going to be one day I can look back on and think, why didn't I use my time more effectively? So that was the decision I made on sentencing day, and I carried that out every single day.
Yeah. Wow. Was that, so that was unexpected, but that wasn't typical. Was this like, you know, we're going to make an example of Rob, or was it just like the wrong day, wrong time?
Well, you know, I mean, that's the thing with sentencing sometimes, when, I mean, somebody could just have a bad day and decide, you know what, instead of 10, let's do 20.
Yeah.
So
Just hand them out. They're just saying it's just a number to them, right?
Right.
I want to know, and here's what I'm thinking as a physical therapist. I'm like, okay, before that, like, yes, you know, you were doing like, you know, like self-medicating and doing different things, but you've been through, probably at some point, your primary care physician, you've been through the methadone clinic. Where did the system, like, do you feel like the system failed you or missed you? And where did that happen?
Well,
Like the good health system, not the bad, you know.
Right. So I guess that's a kind of a twofold answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I just didn't understand addiction or how it worked then,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So when they told me like, hey, you're going to need to be on this for the rest of your life, I believed it.
Yeah.
And then when I first started my sentence and going through, all the processes and everything, you know, they asked me, are you on any medications or anything like that? And I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm on 180 milligrams of methadone a day. And they were just like, okay, cool. Like, not anymore. And so it's just straight cold turkey.
Wow.
And I don't know, like I had attempted on my own to stop several times.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, I was on it to be normal. I was on it to not be sick.
Right.
So it was definitely a bit rough, being in Oklahoma County Jail, which is a not fun place, coming off of an extremely high dose of methadone.
Yeah. No, I can't even begin to imagine. Before we move on to the next piece, I want to know, like, is there something in the beginning part of that journey that someone like me could have done? Or were you just like too into like just the addiction process for anyone to say, hey, Rob, look, there's another alternative. You should go see Aaron or Aaron's friend.
God, you know, that's a really good question, because, you know, I think about that a lot. You know, is there anything that I could say to the me then that would have actually broken through?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because again, like one of the things that I reflected on whenever I got locked up, the thoughts were, okay, what led up to this, and how can I not do that again?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I thought back to was that moment whenever I basically OD'd, and then how that wasn't the thing that made me stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, how could I have justified that? And I couldn't come up with an answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's a really good question, especially for somebody that's just deep into their addiction, of how do you interrupt that pattern,
Right,
without them going to prison and there being no other alternative. But that's a really good question, and I ask myself that a lot, because I would definitely, if there was a way that I could help somebody in that situation, I would like to be a part of it, because that's a really tough spot to be in. I know, because I've been there.
Yeah. Back when you were like that time you were deadlifting, you were already taking opioids. So it wasn't like you hurt your back and then got prescribed it and then it became a problem.
Right.
You know, so, you know, to me, like that's a lot of what, I mean, we encounter more often is, and one of my mastermind students, Elizabeth Brewer, lives in Virginia, where her town has a really big opioid addiction problem. And I think, and that's one of the reasons that I was like, I got to get you on here, because like we deal with this all the time. And like I mentioned to you before the show, I've had a patient who was a self-prescribed addict. He's like, and they're still giving it to me. They're still giving me the opioid. They're still prescribing it to me, but they're not helping me get off of it, even though I want to. Are you encountering other people with similar stories like that through your work and through other things that you're doing?
You know, not a whole lot. I mean, one of the things that I knew, like, I made a decision that I would just not be around, obviously, anybody that used that, because I knew it was a danger point for me, because I really liked it and had a really big problem with it. But as far as, man, like, I don't know. I don't know the answer with that. Like, I think through physical activity, through physical therapy, I think it can help and definitely get people to the point where they can, you know, work their way off of it. Yeah, that's a good question.
You know, it's my job to ask hard questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I don't always know if there's an answer, but some days I look at it and go, well, what if, you know, the people knew before that, you know, like, cause at that time, and well, this is more than 10 years ago, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, I mean, the drug companies were saying, yeah, this stuff is safe, you know, even to medical, it's safe. People don't get addicted to this stuff. So, you know, I don't know what the answers are. But I do know, and I want to fast forward a little bit, like this has made a big impact on you, like understand,
definitely,
but in your business, in your career, in your mission. So from the day you got incarcerated, you said, I'm not going to let this happen again. I want to help other people. Can you tell me more about that? And what's that journey been?
Yeah. So whenever I was dealing drugs, whenever I was on opiates, whenever I was shooting cocaine, I was obviously negatively influencing myself, and I negatively influenced a lot of other people during that time. And that's something that I'm not proud of, and that's something that I can never take back. So my why and my driving force is that because I did those things and I cannot take them back, the only thing that I can do is moving forward each day, try to make every day count and try to make a difference in somebody else's life, and try to make a positive impact anywhere that I can. So that was the driving force, and just having that contrast of now, you know, everybody has problems, you know, but when I can contrast the nights of me laying there staring at a spot on the wall or the ceiling in my prison cell and thinking, I can't wait until I can just get out and have the opportunity to barely get by, struggling, living paycheck to paycheck. Just let me get that. Anything that I encounter in my life now, any adversity, any obstacle, any struggle, I just think back to that time when I would just dream of having the kind of problems that are in my life today.
Yeah. There's different kinds of problems.
Right.
For sure. So what happened, like, was there anything else happening during the time that you're incarcerated that laid the groundwork for where you are right now? Any other pivotal moments or stories or things like that you did or learned?
I decided, you know, again, that I was going to make every day count. I will definitely say this, where the system could have done better. One of the first things that I tried to do was get into a drug program. Because again, you know, the questions were like, how did I get to this point? How can I not do that again? And so I tried to get into a drug program, and they wouldn't let me because I had too many days in my sentence. So here you have, I'm watching as people are being forced into this program that don't want to do it, where I'm like actively like, can you please let me get in there? And they're like, no, you got too many days. So I just took it upon myself. I did a lot of reading, a lot of self-studying, and just started, you know, trying to understand, just working through a lot of like books like that, trying to understand my mind and how that could have happened, how I could, you know, not let it happen again. And also just establishing a routine, a physical routine for myself to get back on track physically. And I did that, and I ended up, just from having a structured program myself and from people seeing me be consistent, they would seek me out, seek out advice, and I would end up training people at every facility that I was at.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so when you got out, like, what was the journey from there to, you've got a very successful CrossFit business now. What were those steps? Was it, I mean, you know, was it like instantaneous, or it took time to work through this and figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to do?
No, definitely not instantaneous. So the name of the business, Twice Bitten CrossFit, comes from having two failed partnerships and overcoming a lot of adversity. And you know, business is not easy. You know, there are always going to be things that unexpectedly come your way that you're going to have to deal with. And so I went, basically the journey started out as me being a one-on-one trainer, having a small amount of clientele, and then growing it from there, increasing my clientele, opening up my first location, and then failed business partnership, multiple failed business partnerships before I wisened up and got a coach.
Yeah.
So Pedro was my first business coach.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So that helped out tremendously, because I didn't know, I mean, when it came to actually running a business, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. So that helped tremendously. And I have coaches in my life now. And that is definitely the way, if you want to fast track, getting ahead and making progress, is definitely get advice and coaching from somebody that knows how to get you there faster.
That's awesome. So you definitely had the passion and drive, but what was the number one thing that you learned working with Pedro that really got things moving in the right direction for you?
So it was really just the business basics. Like, I didn't know anything about, I guess one of the biggest breakthrough moments for me was, as I was working with people, with clients, I was very hesitant about extending myself and really putting myself out there, because I was like, I'm a convicted felon, and like, who am I to like help people? And there's people way better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the videos that Pedro put out that I watched that was like, there are people out there crying themselves to sleep at night because they don't know about the information that you could help them with.
Yeah.
And you don't share it because you're thinking about you and how you're going to feel. Like, you selfish bastard,
Right.
So I was just like, oh, that just really spoke to me though in that moment, and helped me like step up and just start being more open. And this was when I was in Pedro's mastermind group. He had a session we did where he actually brought in his therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, it's like, where are you struggling the most in your business? You talk about that at the round table and they give advice. But this was psychologically, what's the biggest struggle that you're dealing with in your business? And for me, it was like, my previous drug addiction and incarceration. It's not something that I hide, but it's not something I just openly tell people about either. And so there was this fear and anxiety about like, oh, okay, well, what if people find out? And he's like, okay, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a little nutrition orientation with some people at your facility, and you're just going to tell them. And then after that, you're going to write an email to your email list, and you're going to send it out. And then after that, you're going to make a Facebook video, and you're going to post it on Facebook. And as a matter of fact, that video just popped up on my timeline today. It's 3 years ago today that I made that video and put it out there. And so, yeah, and that was just, that really started a huge next chapter of just being able to be open and transparent on a different level to be able to help more people.
Wow. That's amazing. That's powerful. How did that moment impact your business and your life since then, last 3 years?
Well, just a lot of people reached out to me. It made, whenever you are vulnerable to other people, they will in turn be more vulnerable to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it really brought a lot of people to me that had very similar stories. Because I think no matter who you are, you have gone through something in your life that's been tough, and so when you share a vulnerable situation of something you've been through, that's like, whoa, I can't believe he was open about that. It gives people the ability to be more open with you and say, hey, this happened to me. And then it just creates an easier path for you to help somebody and coach somebody, because they're starting with an open book instead of the cover that most people do.
Right. It breaks down the barriers. It's more than just building rapport with people. It's building trust and breaking down barriers and everything.
Definitely.
So how are you doing that these days? That was like almost like a reveal, but like, are you sharing this on a regular basis, or is it part of your, how you're communicating with people? Like, where does this story come into your business these days, and how are you using it?
So it's something I'm definitely, my team, very open with my team about that. So that's in turn created a culture where, the team is vulnerable. And then, with the clientele that we have, that it's just a very open environment where people are there to just support one another. And so there's that. And then like now the one-on-one coaching program that has just allowed me to connect more deeply with more people on many different spectrums.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
amazing.
pretty cool. Yeah.
So how with your CrossFit gym, like we all know, like I was at CrossFit this morning. You know, we
Yeah.
all kind of know what CrossFit is. I
Uh-huh.
think we know what CrossFit is, just like everyone thinks they know what, you know, a lot of things are. But how are you guys doing CrossFit different? What's setting you apart from maybe the other CrossFits in town, or, you know, other places around the country? Like what's your mix on that?
So for me, CrossFit is a vehicle to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not married to like any one way of fitness or methodology. For me, it's about what's effective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if that means somebody needs to adjust movement patterns to where we're never doing anything overhead, or we're substituting something else in that makes more sense based off of that person and their needs, then that's absolutely what should happen.
Yeah.
Right. So it's definitely a based off of where the person is at and meeting their needs versus being focused on competitions or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. And are you guys doing anything specific when people do get injured these days? Or you even personally, are you doing different things? Like if you work out hard enough and you tweak something, are you doing it like anything specific?
We have a physical therapist that's a part of our community that we refer people to. But also it's, you know, depending on what happened, I like to keep people engaged. And like, let's say somebody hurt their shoulder,
Yeah.
that they could still come in and do the Airdyne bike or something like that, just to keep the habit and pattern going of them coming to the location.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus, well, I'm injured, so I'm just going to stay home and my whole body's going to become deconditioned and I'm going to be completely out of the habit of doing everything that I was doing. And then
Right.
when I am good to go, I have to start completely back over from square one.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. You know, what's funny is that I've seen more people get injured going to yoga than in CrossFit. You know, I've seen someone break a toe. I've seen, you know, and a lot of people I was thinking about this morning. A lot of people go to yoga because maybe yoga will solve their problem. You know, like their pain. I don't know that people go to CrossFit because, CrossFit is going to solve my back pain, which either of them could. But I was thinking, like, what are the two different reasons people go? And the question I'm getting to is a question I got on a coaching call earlier, and I want your answer. Is the guy was like, well, I'm trying to do injury screens at gyms and at CrossFit, but I'm not getting any traction. If someone like me, a physical therapist, a clinic owner, like, look, I can help people with back pain who want to be helped, but you know what I need is partners in the community in the fitness. And fitness is where people are closer to where people get hurt. I'm like too many steps beyond, and I want to be there. What would be some of the things that I could say, do, or ask you where you would say, like, absolutely, Aaron, I want you on board with our team so that we can help all these impact lives every day? Like, how would you like me to approach you?
So one of the things that I've found, and one of the reasons for the online portion of the program, is that there are so many people, especially in my area, that are just so deconditioned that they're not even ready for an intro class.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not, and they're scared of it. There's so many people that don't even walk through the door because they're like, I don't want to be that person that can't do that. I'm not going to be the only one that can't do that stuff. Everybody's going to be looking at me, judging me, and setting people up on a path that they can win, that gets them to the point to where they have the baseline of fitness to where they can start their journey off. And so for a lot of people, that's just moving. And in the online spectrum, getting them to the point to where we're just talking basic movement patterns, like, hey, we're going to do some body weight squats. I want you to send me some video of it so we can just see how they're moving. And then based off of that, if you see anything that is just way off, and that's where a recommendation would be like, hey, I think you should go and see, somebody like you in that case.
Yeah. And if you and I didn't know each other, and I had a PT clinic in the community, like, how does it work? Like, what could I say to you to introduce myself to get to that point where you're like, yeah, you don't move well. That hurts when you do a body weight squat. You need to go see Aaron before we're even going to get you into a class, or you're injured. Because a lot of times we see people who get their shoulder injured and they go to their surgeon. Surgeon says, don't lift weights. What are you doing lifting weights? Stop lifting weights. And the CrossFit, gym loses a member. Like, if I could keep that person on your schedule, and then we both keep them healthy, but we didn't know each other, what would be the best way for me to introduce myself to you? Like,
see, that's a really good question. Because one of the things that has got me is that there's just a lot of times there's such a gap in skill level, somebody just beginning and getting to the point of intermediate. Like, let's just take, overhead squat, for example. If that's something that's prescribed, it doesn't have hardly anything to do with strength. It has to do with the mobility, right? And somebody that's new, that doesn't have the mobility to even do that movement with a PVC pipe, will try to do it with the bar because that's what they see everybody else doing. Right. And then they set themselves up for injury, and that can easily happen, and it has, and it will probably continue to. So to figure out like how you best bridge that gap and have awareness and education, so it doesn't get to that point where there's, because obviously we don't want people to get injured in the first place, right?
Non-injury isn't very motivating to people. I don't want people to get injured, but not being injured isn't very motivating. Once people are injured and they can't go to CrossFit, then that's more, that's the motivator, unfortunately. But so I think that's a good point. So you guys have programs, or part of your program is to, a little bit maybe screen people or take them through an intro class and make sure that they're good for the movements,
One of the things that I've noticed and just seen a trend with is a lot of times people will come in, they'll be super motivated, they'll follow the meal plan that we give them, but then after, whatever amount of time the challenge lasts, then they start to fall off. So it's starting people with less expectations, more guidance, easier steps, so they can win and build momentum, especially in the nutrition part of it, and then just moving, just moving.
What are some of the best things that you're doing to retain your clients and customers?
So trying to figure out ways to always trying to ask myself, like, what is the main obstacle they're facing right now, and what can I do to help fix it? And again, that's where, I would see a lot of people, even people that are consistent, they would lose weight whenever focusing on, a meal plan. And then as soon as the meal plan's done, they gain the weight back. Right. So really teaching people a system for how they can make eating healthier and still have the things that they want and don't feel like they have to never have anything again, how to incorporate that in their life. Because I've weighed over 300 pounds before myself. Right. So I like to eat. But that has to be balanced with eating in a way that keeps me, where I want to be body composition wise, but still doesn't deprive me of the things that I want psychologically either. So it's finding that balance. And, I've luckily been able to do that and have somebody walk me through acquiring the skills to be to that point. And that's what I'm really trying to help other people with as well. So, they can do the
Awesome.
things in fitness they want to do.
Dude, that's great. So what are your goals right now for fitness and business and in your life? Where are you going next?
Just to continue like focusing on the life transformation aspect. Like it's always been my goal. I want to meet with and work with the top fitness experts, life transformation experts in the world, and then to translate those skills to people in need. You know, I think if the focus is on life transformation, that'll always be something that people need, whatever form that takes. And that's physically, that's emotionally, that's through nutrition as well. So I'm always going to be focusing on that part, especially the mindset part of it is just helping break people's beliefs. Like people will have this story, you know, in their mind, are things are the way they are. And that's just because that's the way life is. And it doesn't have to be that way. If you don't like the situation that you're in, you can change it.
How do we break through that? Like someone listening is like, like my business is never going to be successful, or I'm never going to be good enough. I mean, what's your best tip or advice for someone who's in that mindset?
With that, it's going to be the power of questions, you know? Mm-hmm. So first question in that is that really true? Is there anyone else in the world with the same set of circumstances as you that's found a way through it?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then that means it's possible. Right? So that's the first step, is to create doubt in a belief that you currently hold, because we all have blind spots. We all have limiting beliefs. And sometimes our beliefs are so deeply held that we don't even realize that they're beliefs. It's on an unconscious level because they're so deeply held. And it's not until you're exposed to something, maybe somebody asking you a certain question, that you're like, wow, I didn't realize that I thought that. Right? So it's always seeking out, you know, what questions can I be asking myself to help me become more aware, right? And realize that is just a belief that I have.
Yeah, beliefs are powerful. I mean,
absolutely.
If in performance, in life, and success, you know, I mean, I've been there with them too. So thanks for sharing that. That's let me ask you another question. I want to just shuttle backwards a little bit. If someone's working with a patient or someone has an addiction issue, especially someone with back pain and, you know, if they're opioid addiction or something, what's the number one thing that they can do to help that person?
I would say to just ask them questions. You know, like just to really try to understand, because in order to influence somebody, you have to meet them where they're at. You have to understand what is currently influencing them right now. So through questions about what's going on in their life and listening, actively listening, instead of thinking about, you know, what I want to tell them, what I want them to understand, it's how can you, through questions, lead them to the path of admitting, you know, hey, and that's something that I want help with.
Right. Yeah. That's versus, like a motivational interviewing type of almost, right? Where you have to have the other person has to say, yes, that I want your help. Right.
Exactly. Because when you tell somebody, even like on an unconscious, subconscious level, they will automatically become defensive. But when you can, through your questions, get them to the point to where it's their idea, you know, then they're going to be open to it. And so I'm glad you asked that, because I think that's a really good answer to, you know, how you can potentially help somebody that's in that position.
Right.
Because I think through the power of questions and getting them to come to the realization of, you know what I'm going through right now isn't okay, and I can't handle it on my own, and I do need help.
Yeah. What's the number one question you would ask?
Probably like, what's the main thing that you're struggling with right now? And if they say, nothing, I'm good. Okay, well, if you were struggling with something, what would you say it is?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I can see how that like helps break down the barrier, but it's also the way that we interview people when we're even just trying to figure out what's wrong to sell them into one of our plan of care. I mean, are you guys doing similar stuff when you are onboarding people in your gym or in the personal training that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're going to help people, you've got to understand like what what is their pain, what is their need, how can we genuinely help them? And if we don't dig enough through questions to really find out what it is for them, then we cannot effectively help them to as high a degree as if we go through that intelligence gathering phase and really find out what it is for that person,
Right.
how we can help them.
Wow. Awesome. Rob, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think would be beneficial or help our audience?
I guess it's, just always knowing that any problems or obstacles that come into your life were put there to help you grow into the next best version of yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that if you can always like just think of that, it's tough to think about that when you're in it. It's like, why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
It's the questions that you ask yourself instead of why is this happening to me? It's where's the lesson here? And how am I going to grow from this?
Wow. No, that's great. And especially as entrepreneurs, we're always encountering problems. I mean, and they're good problems, but they don't always feel good.
Right.
Without some perspective, it's like, wait a minute. No, that's a good price. Like, how do I add more staff? What do I deal with too many people coming? Like the classes are full. We have to add another class. Well, it's not a bad problem, but it can feel out of proportion to the perspective because we get in our head and we lose perspective. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, we're just out of time, Rob, and I want to respect that you got a busy day, but if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about you, where can we find you online?
On Facebook, Rob Grupe, Grupe, and then through my Instagram, Rob Grupe there. You could just shoot me a private message.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. We'll also put your information and links in the show notes. Rob, again, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your story with us. It was really powerful. A very different episode than I typically have. And I think it's a really powerful lesson for everybody. And so thank you for providing that perspective and sharing.
Definitely. Yeah. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Well, this is the Aaron LeBauer and Rob Grupe, and this is the CashPT Lunch Hour. If you guys got anything out of this episode, I would definitely appreciate you letting us know, giving a shout out on social media somewhere, tag me, and look out for my new book coming out. It's the CashPT Blueprint Book, cashptblueprintbook.com. By the time this episode airs, it should be out. So look out for that. And again, this is Aaron and Rob. I want you to dream big and work hard and persist through all the challenges. And remember, it's all about perspective. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys.
Yep, you bet.